The real reason a married man feels safe with you. Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed how certain married men seem to gravitate towards you? I'm not talking about obvious flirting or brazen advances. I'm talking about that peculiar behavior. He seeks your company, shares confidences that he would never reveal to his wife, smiles differently when you're around. And here's what intrigues him the most. He doesn't necessarily want an affair. He just feels insurance. But sure of what exactly? The answer goes far beyond what you might think. Carl Jung discovered something disturbing about the male psyche that explains why a man can be completely committed to a woman and still feel vulnerable and exposed alongside her. It's as if there is a part of him that needs refuge, an emotional safe haven that marriage doesn't offer. And you, without realizing it, have become that port. What I'm going to reveal in this video is going to completely change your perspective on relationships, marriage, and that weird dynamic that you feel but have never been able to name. Get ready, because the truth is more Machiavellian than you think. 1. The paradox of marital intimacy. There's a brutal truth about marriage that no one likes to admit. The closer you are to someone, the more vulnerable you become. And vulnerability for many men is synonymous with danger. Not the obvious physical danger, but something much deeper and more threatening to the male ego. When a man gets married, he enters into an emotional contract where he needs to reveal his weaknesses, his fears, his insecurities. And herein lies the problem. Each revelation turns into potential ammunition. Think about that for a moment. The wife knows every failure, every moment of cowardice or doubt. She saw her husband cry. She saw him fail professionally. She saw him insecure about his own masculinity. This intimacy creates a complete archive of weaknesses. And during a heated discussion, when emotions are boiling, this file can be opened mercilessly. A cutting sentence about that promotion he didn't get, or about that moment of emotional fragility, and that's it. The wound is open. Now you enter the scene. You don't carry that full history of vulnerabilities from him. You weren't there when he failed on that important project. You haven't witnessed your worst moments. With you, it can be an edited version of yourself, a version where past failures don't exist or can be retold more favorably. It's like starting a game from scratch, without the weight of previous defeats. But there's something even more strategic going on. With you, he controls the narrative of his own life. You can choose which stories to tell, which aspects of your personality to reveal, which vulnerabilities to expose. It's a psychological freedom that marriage has eroded over time. The wife knows the full truth, not the polished version he prefers to present to the world. And there's more. You have no real power over his life. You can't use this information to destroy your marriage, ruin your reputation in the family, or turn your children against it. The wife has all these weapons at her disposal. Even if she never wears them, the mere existence of them creates a constant tension, a sense of always being under surveillance, always subject to judgment. With you, that threat simply doesn't exist. He can let his guard down without fear of the devastating consequences that a betrayal of trust could cause. 2. The social mask that he doesn't have to wear with you. Every married man wears a mask at home. I'm not talking about conscious falsehood, but about a social role that he needs to play constantly. He needs to be the reliable provider, the exemplary father, the emotionally stable husband, the leader of the family who never wavers. This mask is heavy and exhausting. Imagine carrying a character 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever being able to really relax. The wife has specific and relentless expectations. She expects him to be strong when she's weak, to have answers when she has questions, to be the emotional safe haven of the family. If he shows too much uncertainty, if he falters too much, if he shows too much fear, the family structure begins to shake. The children become insecure, the wife becomes anxious, and suddenly he is no longer the man she thought she had chosen. With you, that pressure magically disappears. You don't depend on him financially. You don't expect it to solve your problems. You don't judge him by the same criteria that society and the family impose. He may be hesitant, he may admit confusion, he may show fatigue without it shaking your perception of him. It is a psychological relief so profound that it becomes addictive. Here's the Machiavellian element of this dynamic. You become the space where he can be human again. Not the hero of the family, not the tireless warrior, just an ordinary human being with doubts and frailties. This space is so rare in his life that when he finds it, he grabs it tightly. And you offer it without even realizing it, simply because you are not part of the system of obligations and expectations that governs his marriage. The mask he wears at home also protects him. It's true. It protects him from being seen as weak, as inadequate, as less of a man than he should be. But protection comes at a cost, emotional isolation. He's protected, but he's also alone in this armor. With you, he can take off his armor without fear of being attacked. It can take a deep breath. It can be imperfect. It can simply exist without playing a role. If you want to understand why a married man feels emotionally safe with you and how this safety reveals a deep, unconscious pattern rooted in his shadow, the Jung method is fixed in the first comment 3. The emotional refuge that is missing at home. Marriage should be the ultimate emotional refuge, right? Wrong. For many men, marriage has become a silent battlefield where every word needs to be measured, every action calculated, every emotion carefully filtered. The home has become more of a performance arena than a place of genuine rest. And here's the cruel irony: the more time passes, the worse it gets. In the early years, there may have been room for real vulnerability. But over time, with the responsibilities increasing, with frustrations piling up, with unresolved resentments creating layers and layers of tension, marriage becomes a zone of emotional danger. Any demonstration of weakness can be interpreted as failure. Any admission of fear can be seen as incompetence. Man quickly learns to keep these emotions to himself. This is where you become crucial. You offer him something he lost long ago, a space where he can speak freely without being judged, without every word being weighed on a scale of marital adequacy. He may complain about work without hearing that he should be more grateful. He can express doubts about the future without being accused of weakness. He may even admit that he is tired of the routine without this being interpreted as rejection of the family. You've become the confidant he can't have at home. And this is not accidental. The wife is deeply invested in his life in ways that you are not. His every decision affects her directly. Every failure of his has real consequences for her life. So she can't be neutral. She can't just be a compassionate listener. She has a personal interest in every choice, in every direction he takes. You don't have that investment. You can listen without a hidden agenda. You can advise without direct consequences for your own life. You can offer perspective without fear of sabotaging your own future. This neutrality creates a space of emotional freedom that is incredibly valuable. He can process your thoughts out loud. He can explore possibilities without commitment. He can be completely honest about his feelings because you won't use it against him later. 4. The Anima projection and its secret role. Within the mind of every man, there is an inner image of the feminine. I'm not talking about superficial physical preferences, but a kind of psychological mold that represents everything he associates with the feminine in its purest and most idealized form. This image was formed throughout his life through experiences with his mother, with significant women, with cultural ideals and personal dreams. When a man gets married, there is always a gap between that perfect internal image and the real woman by his side. The wife is human, with defects, limitations, peculiarities that do not fit perfectly into the ideal mold. Over time, this gap does not shrink, it increases. The reality of daily life corrodes the initial idealization. She's no longer the princess of the beginning of the relationship. She's a complex and sometimes difficult person with whom he needs to negotiate closet space and household finances. You, on the other hand, remain in the potential zone. He never saw you in your pajamas crumpled up on a Sunday morning. He never argued with you about who forgot to pay the electric bill. He has never seen you sick, irritable, exhausted by routine. You exist in a space where idealization is still possible, where that perfect internal image can be projected without being constantly contradicted by the brutal reality of everyday life. This does not necessarily mean sexual attraction, although it may include this element. It means that you represent something that he has lost, the possibility of a female connection that still carries mystery, that still maintains an element of fascination, that can still be idealized. With his wife, all mysteries were revealed, all imperfections were catalogued, all initial magic was replaced by absolute familiarity. Here's the psychological trick. You're not necessarily better than his wife in any objective way, but you have the tremendous advantage of not being fully known. The unknown part of his personality serves as a projection screen for that ideal female image he carries within himself. He fills in the gaps of what he doesn't know about you with elements of that inner idealization, and in this process, you become the bearer of something that he deeply misses, the possibility of a woman who can still surprise him, who still maintains some mystery, who has not yet been completely demystified by living together. 5. Why you pose no real threat. Let's cut to the chase. You are safe precisely because you have no real power over his life. It sounds brutal, but it's the naked truth. The wife can destroy everything he has built with a single divorce decision. She can keep half of the assets, she can limit access to her children, she can ruin her social reputation, she can turn her life into a bureaucratic and emotional hell. This power exists even when it is not exercised, creating a dynamic of permanent tension. You don't have any of those weapons. If he disappoints you, you just walk out of his life. If you let yourself down, it just pops out of yours. There is no shared heritage. There are no children in between. There are no entire families that will be affected. There is no legal structure that needs to be dismantled. It is a relationship that can end cleanly, without mutual destruction assured. This powerlessness creates a fascinating paradox. Precisely because you can't seriously harm him, he feels free to be more authentic with you. It's like the difference between talking to a therapist and talking to a family member. The therapist has no power over your everyday life, so you can reveal things that you would never reveal to someone who could use that information against you in practical contexts. Plus, you don't depend on it for emotional or financial survival. His wife built a whole life around him. Her dreams, her plans, her security, everything is intertwined with his existence. If it fails with it. If he changes direction radically, she has to deal with the consequences. This interdependence creates constant pressure. With you, he can be imperfect without ruining anyone's life. You can have doubts about your choices without those doubts threatening the stability of an entire family. It may even admit that you've made serious mistakes in the past without you having to deal with the consequences of those mistakes on a daily basis. You listen, maybe you give your opinion, but at the end of the day, your life goes on regardless of his choices. That's the freedom he finds with you. The freedom to be flawed without catastrophic consequences. And ironically, it's that same lack of real risk that makes him feel more connected to you than to the person he's shared his entire life with. 6. The power game. He lost in marriage. Every relationship is a constant negotiation for power. Who decides where to live, how to spend the money, how to raise the children, where to spend the holidays? In marriage, these negotiations become increasingly complex and exhausting. And here's the reality that few admit. Many men feel like they've systematically lost these battles over the years. I'm not necessarily talking about a controlling or manipulative wife. I'm talking about the natural dynamic where he makes concession after concession to keep the peace, to keep the family going, to be the good husband that society expects him to be. It yields in the style of home decor. It yields in the weekend schedule. He gives in on decisions about his children. And each concession seems small at the moment, but accumulated over the years, it creates a sense of powerlessness. With you, that game simply doesn't exist. You are not negotiating a shared future. You are not building a joint equity. You are not making decisions that will affect the next 20 years. Your interactions exist in the immediate present, free from the weight of long-term consequences. He can express opinions without fear of creating a precedent that will come back to haunt him later. Here is the truly Machiavellian element. With you, it regains the feeling of autonomy. He can say what he really thinks about politics without calculating whether it will generate a 3-hour discussion. He can express preferences without fear of offending someone who shares his life with him. It can simply be direct and honest, because there is not this minefield of accumulated sensibilities that needs to navigate. The wife knows all her emotional buttons and knows exactly how to press them during a conflict. She knows which words hurt him the most, which accusations destabilize him, which comparisons infuriate him. This intimate knowledge becomes a potential weapon during any disagreement. With you, these buttons haven't been mapped yet. You don't have the full arsenal of emotional ammunition that years of living together provide. This creates a dynamic where he feels curiously more powerful by your side. Not because it dominates you or controls you, but because the balance of power isn't as unbalanced as it is at home. You start from scratch, with no history of losing battles, no accumulated resentments that need to be constantly managed. It's a rare respite in a life where he feels he's constantly at a tactical disadvantage. 7. The psychological freedom you offer. Freedom in marriage is a carefully maintained illusion. He is free to do whatever he wants, as long as it is what the family needs. You can choose any path as long as it does not jeopardize financial security. You can pursue your dreams as long as it doesn't interfere with established responsibilities. These are theoretical freedoms that in practice have so many conditions attached that they cease to be real freedoms. Every decision he makes needs to be filtered through a complex system of considerations. How will this affect children? How will this impact the family budget? What will the wife think? What will family members say? This constant filter is mentally exhausting. It's like trying to write poetry while someone corrects your grammar in real time. Technically, you can write whatever you want, but self-censorship kills creativity. With you, this filter is removed. He may think aloud without immediately calculating the practical implications. It can fantasize about radical life changes without you starting to list all the reasons why it would be irresponsible. You can explore crazy ideas, secret ambitions, alternate versions of yourself that marriage has forced you to abandon. You become a psychological laboratory where he can test versions of himself that no longer fit into the life he has built. Maybe he was adventurous before the wedding, but now he's the responsible father who can't take any chances. With you, you can access that part of yourself again, even if it's just by talking about what could have been. It is an outlet for aspects of his personality that have been systematically suppressed by the demands of family life. This psychological freedom is different from physical freedom. He doesn't necessarily have to do anything different. He just needs to feel that he could, that there is a space where other versions of him are still possible, where he is not completely imprisoned in the character that married life demands. You represent pure possibility, and possibility is oxygen to the human psyche. 8. The hidden price of this security for everyone. This whole dynamic has a cost that no one talks about openly. For you, there is the illusion of a deep connection that is actually built on a foundation of emotional convenience. He's not being authentic because he trusts you deeply. He's being authentic because you're emotionally convenient. You don't pose a risk, so he can afford honesty. It's a real connection, but one built on fragile foundations. For him, the price is a growing fragmentation of identity. He's a man at home, another man at work, another man with you. These versions do not communicate, do not integrate, do not form a coherent whole. It's like living multiple parallel lives, and that comes at a significant psychological cost. The feeling of always acting, always adapting, always hiding parts of yourself to fit into each context.